Hello everybody, this is Connor, BoatsDon'tSink, here with another deck profile. Today we're looking at the last of the 5 quintuplets, Itsuki, with her 8 comeback trigger deck. Once again, keeping that theme of 8 matching triggers across all of the girls here. First off, we're going to be looking at the deck list as usual. This one running slightly fewer different cards than most of the other lists, more 2-ofs and 4-ofs, fewer 1-ofs. But again, pretty like typical deck composition. We're running a level 1 combo into a level 3 combo. Most of the quintuplets decks are going to sort of feature just that standard deck composition, nothing weird. We do once again have an event for our girl here, the code word event that we're playing 4 copies of. A bit more important to this deck's function, I think, than some of the other decks' events, though not as important as, say, the headphone event in the Miku decks. We're not actually focusing much on events in this deck, but we've got it nonetheless. 8 comeback triggers, so we have lots of waiting room access, which would actually allow you to play a lot more 1-ofs in this deck if you wanted to. I've opted not to in this list since I think the number of ways we have to get our level 1 combo are a bit limited in the early game, so I've opted to go for a little more consistency rather than tech cards everywhere, but we'll take a look at our ways to do that as we go through the cards. Starting off with our Climax Combos, we have, as I said, a level 1 combo and a level 3 combo, both on comeback and both require experience. These are the 2 combos from set 2. Our level 1 combo requiring experience 2, and our level 3 combo requiring experience 6, which is actually rather high, so that is something we're going to have to keep in mind throughout the game. The level 1 combo's actual effect. First effect is actually an act ability based effect. When you use an act, it gains 1500. So we do have a lot of cards in this deck that are going to let us do that consistently on our turn and our opponent's turn. And the Climax combo itself, experience 2 on attack. If the Climax is in play, discard 1 card, look at up to 3 cards from the top of your deck, choose up to 3 code word, which is our event, or quintuplets characters, reveal them, put them in hand, and put the rest into your waiting room. So at best, you're discarding 1 to get 3 cards into your hand, which is a +2. So we are able to fill hand very easily with this combo. Fielding 2 of this combo is likely going to have you ending turn with max hand size. Fielding 3 is going to put you way over, but we do have ways to sort of compensate for that. Specifically a card that's going to let us increase our maximum hand size, so that we're able to resolve this combo and keep 8 to 9 cards in hand. The other big thing is we are going to want to probably recur this throughout the game, at least a couple times. It's most decks that you're going to see like this that like very easily put you to max hand size off of like 1 to 2 copies of their combo. One example I can think of being the Kotori level 1 in Data Live, are going to want to use their combo instead of just like 3 times all in one turn, 1 to 2 times across multiple turns. So it's important that we were able to keep these alive or have ways to get them back, which thankfully going up to 6k on defense when we use an act combined with backups is a pretty decent way to keep these alive. Our level 3 combo is on play, draw 2, discard 1, so pretty standard cantrip effect. It is going to help us dig for our Climax, which is nice. And Climax combo, experience. On attack, if we have experience 6 and if the Climax in play, we can discard 3 quintuplets characters to deal 1 damage and then deal 4 damage. So very powerful finisher, but very expensive cost. Normally, no deck would be able to field 3 copies of these and discard 3 twice, or discard 3 times rather. Most decks wouldn't even be able to field 2. You know, one deck with a similar cost, Fate Stay Night with the Saber finisher, very infrequently gets to actually field 2 copies of the Saber finisher and resolve both of them. But our goal here is to actually field 3 of these and resolve all 3. Having a cantrip on play, the draw to discard one helps a lot, keeping the hand size in order to do this, since we are going to have to discard 9 total. 8 comeback triggers also means that, if you go into attack phase with 8 hands to discard, you're reasonably likely to be able to get that 9th card into your hand during the attack phase. The biggest issue really is just that they have to be characters. We can't discard events or climaxes, but thankfully our event can turn itself into more characters, as we'll see later. So, very powerful finisher. Dealing 1 and 4 3 times alongside 3 attacks is pretty much enough to kill most people from a pretty decent range. So we do like to see that. Strong finisher for sure. Now, as we said, both of our Climax combos here are experience effects. However, most of Itsuki's cards don't actually have much other theme based around experience. It's really just those 2 cards. So instead, we're actually focusing this deck a lot more on the act ability side of things, with a lot of cards that are going to support act effects or give us act effects to use. So that's really going to make up about like half of our deck here that we're going to take a look at. First up, we have Studying and Advance Itsuki Nakano. This is a card you commonly see in all sorts of quintuplets builds. It's a 0/0. You can rest it to give a character 500 power and the following ability. When this card's battle opponent becomes reversed, you can put the top card of your opponent's clock into their waiting room. If you do, put that character into your opponent's clock. It's very commonly played to beat things like Encore or effects that activate when a character is sent to the waiting room. Since obviously this effect is just going to send them straight to clock instead of their waiting room. It's pretty important in the meta right now overall, with standby decks playing 1/1s that have Encore, or a lot of decks are playing level 0s with plussing effects that activate when they go to waiting room rather than on play. Hololive is a big example of that with the Aqua and Aki level 0s, and the new Laplas level 0 as well. So being able to stop these is a pretty decent thing right now. You're also seeing cards even like in this deck itself, the Itsuki level 0 from set 1, when it goes to waiting room, look at up to 4, add a level 1 or higher card. You're able to stop all sorts of effects like that, and it's an act effect, and it pumps 500 power, so lots of synergy all around, and good into the meta. Second effect is pay to rest this card to salvage a quintuplets character. Again, it's an act ability. We actually don't have a lot of uses for stock in this deck other than early plays and brainstorms, so pay to rest salvage is actually pretty decent, honestly, since most of our costs are hand and not stock. Another level 0 that we have, this is actually our Climax swapper. So it's just on play, pay 1, discard a Climax, add a Climax from waiting room to hand. Really good at helping us loop our combo multiple times, but also has an act effect of its own. You can rest 2 quintuplets characters to give a character 3,000 power, which could be relevant to help your level 1 combo get over, say, like a big 1/1 or even a 2/2 potentially. 3,000 is a lot of power. On the turn that you Climax swap to get your Climax, if you don't need to like brainstorm and rest something else in your back row, you can just rest your 2 back row characters for this and have at it. Or realistically, you could even just rest this and something else, and then play over this, because your level 1 combo is going to get you a billion hand back anyway. Here is pretty much one of the most important cards in the deck, Pure Wish Itsuki Nakano. First effect, Continuous. You get +1 to the limit on the number of cards in your hand. So this is going to let us end our turn with 8 cards and not have to discard. If you have 2 of these, you can end with 9 and not have to discard, which is great. Really good with our level 1 combo since it's giving us so much hand to work with. And really good with our level 3 combo because it needs us to have so much hand to work with. Second effect is just an assist. During your turn, if your hand has 5 or more cards, all of your characters in front of this get plus 500 power. And it's also our Brainstorm, which is the act ability that we can use on it most turns to trigger all of our effects. Pay 1, rest this card, flip over 4 cards from the top deck, put them into waiting room, etc. For each comeback trigger, we get to search our deck for a quintuplets character. So it is only a Brainstorm 4, but it is limited to comeback triggers, sort of the downside for having such pushed effects on the rest of the card, specifically the hand size one. But we're playing 8 comeback anyway, so this is just a search Brainstorm for us. Kind of works out nicely when we have a search Brainstorm alongside 8 comeback triggers and our back row that can salvage. And our event salvages as well. So it gives us a lot of access just to every zone whenever we need it. One of our plussing zeros of choice, Gentle and Sincere Itsuki. This is an interesting way to have an act effect. Its first effect, Continuous. If you have 5 or more quintuplets characters, this card gets act back up 2000 level 0. So instead of playing 102k backups, we're actually playing a level 0 2k backup. Only restriction being that we have to have a full board, which is a little awkward with some of the cards we're playing, but we can make it work most of the time. Its other effect is beginning of opponent's attack phase. If there's a character facing it, you can move it to an open position. So over your center stage. So it's a runner, meaning if we draw it, turn 1 or turn 2, it's a plussing 0 for us. If we draw it anytime past that, it's a 2k backup, which is great. Works really well with the entire deck. Moving us to level 1, we have Monthly Death Anniversary, Itsuki Nakano. This is another way for us to benefit from having act abilities, as well as an act ability in itself. Whenever you use once per turn, when you use an act ability, you can give a character 1000 power. Not a huge boost, but it's a boost nonetheless. And act, rest of this card, choose one of your characters, it gets plus X until end of turn. X is the number of quintuplets characters you have times 500. So on a full board, this is going to be pumping 2500 power, which is actually a pretty reasonably sized power boost. That's going to, on its own, put our level 1 combos to 95 with Climax. Since they're 45 base, they'll gain 15 from their own effect when you use act. It makes them 6k. The 25 makes them 85. Climax makes them 95. If we give them the extra 1000 as well, that's going to put them to 10.5. So it means our level 1 combo can get over a lot of things. Really good to beat multiple lanes if you're able to do this and the Climax swaps rest 2 effect in the same turn. You can get multiple lanes over 10k, which in a lot of matchups is maybe good enough to beat 2-2s. Quintuplets especially, since their 2-2s are only 7k 8k, you're able to sort of get out of counter range even against those. At level 2, we have Fresh Start Itsuki Nakano. This is another act ability we can use. Rest it to give a character 2k power, and during this card's battle, your opponent cannot play event cards. The event card part isn't super relevant in most matchups. The biggest thing is quintuplets has their -3 soul event, and being able to stop that is pretty strong. But 2k power is just, again, a really good power boost to have. And the first effect, if we're able to establish a board of early plays and use backups with all of our act boost effects to win board, this first effect can actually be really strong because we can sack our 2-1 as an act ability to move one of our opponent's back row characters up into the front and start killing their brainstorms and stuff like that to just put our opponent even further behind. We're also playing an anti-change counter, which obviously it's a backup, it's an act ability. This is just a pretty standard 2500 backup with a pay 2 and sack a character to anti-change. So pretty normal. We're just playing this because it's an anti-change backup. And at level 3, a card that benefits from all these act effects, we have New Year Itsuki Nakano. This is an early play if we have 4 or more Itsuki, which is hopefully going to be always in this deck. On play, we can put up to 1 card from the top of our clock into the waiting room, and this gains the following ability until the end of your opponent's next turn. At the beginning of your opponent's attack phase, choose up to 1 of your opponent's characters, and that character does not become reverse until end of turn. Pretty strange effect, but it actually has one sort of really big use. If your opponent has anti-change bombs, they can't run them into you to get reversed and then bomb our early play. Instead, they have to find a way to just get bigger. So it protects our early play from one of the fairly common methods of early play removal. Though I think with 2-2s being as strong as they are right now, a lot of decks are probably actually just opting for the power method over bombing anyway. But, it is what it is. It's a heal anyway, so it's really just icing on top. In some other builds, you can also use this to prevent your opponent from crashing characters and guarantee that you have reverse targets for the set 1 Itsuki combo, but we're not playing the set 1 Itsuki combo in this deck. And the last effect is whenever you use an act, if you have another quintuplets character, this card gets plus 3,000 power until end of turn, which makes this essentially an 11k, which is, you know, a really good stat line for an early play healer. Most of the time, these are going to be like 10ks or 10.5s, so assuming we have a backup to play, this is really high stat line just for an early play healer to have. Looking at our other utility, it's really just the rest of the cards in the deck that round out our ability to find our level 1 combo. We have the quintessential quintuplets, Itsuki Nakano. This is from set 1, I mentioned earlier. It's a level 0 bomb, and when it goes to waiting room, you can discard 1, check top 4, add a level 1 or higher card. Mainly going to be using this to look for our level 1 combo, or potentially like level 3s to clock for experience, I guess. But mostly just to try to find our level 1 combo and our event, since that's going to give us a lot of selectivity later in the game. We have 2 copies of Awkward Personality Itsuki Nakano. This is a drop salvage from the trial deck. Again, just good for selectivity. And since our Brainstorm searches, this gives us more waiting room access in the main phase. In addition, on attack, you may put the top card of your deck into your waiting room. If it's a climax, draw 1, discard 1. Just kind of additional text on the card, not really something super important for this deck. We have Towards Her Dream Itsuki Nakano. We don't have any like clock costed plussing effects in this deck, so this is our one way to prevent ourselves from getting the clock like locked out of leveling up at like 0-5. Put a card from your hand into your clock on play. Look at top X cards from the top of your deck. Choose up to 1 card from among them, put it in your hand, and put the rest into your waiting room. X is equal to the number of other quintuplets characters you have. So you can't just play this on an empty board. You do have to have some number of characters. But, you know, clock to check top 2 or 3 and add a card is still pretty decent. It can add climaxes, which can help us with consistency for our level 1 combo there. But again, a lot of times we're just trying to use this to dig into enough copies of our level 1 combo to get started. In addition, when your opponent's climax is placed on their climax area, you can put this card into your stock. This is a bit of a pro and a con. If you play this card early at level 0, this is actually pretty good. Since, you know, you play this at 0, hit your opponent to 1 first. They go to level 1 combo, you get free stock. However, if you do this like on the turn that you clock yourself to level 1 and then combo off, and then they play a climax, sending this to stock is actually going to turn off the 2k backup. So you have to be very careful about that. Your sort of timing with using this and whether you intend to use the backup or not. Next we have a level 1 bomb. It's a level 1 bomb. However, also when we play a comeback, which is any of our climaxes, this gains 1,000 power and Twin Drive, which Twin Drive is really good with plussing climax triggers. We can use this to pay out any that we trigger before it gets to attack, or just to try to dig into triggering some to get extra hand. Gaining 1,000 power is also pretty decent, because it means this is 5k with climax, and we can use any of our act abilities to pump this to get it, you know, high enough to get over a level 1 combo against most decks, which means it's going to be able to survive and threaten being a bomb on defense, which is the important part here. It does once again run into the issue of if you crash this into your opponent as a bomb, you turn off your 2k backup, which is not ideally what we want to be going for here, so we would rather swing over our opponent's characters, threaten the bomb effect on defense, and have our 2k backups actually live. Again, another bomb here. This one is a 1-1 anti-change bomb that sends to memory, so it does stop Encore. But even better than stopping Encore, it stops our opponent from really ever getting that character back. Some bomb effects just don't really matter that much, like stock bombs in matchups like Kanata. If you send their level 3 to stock, they're just going to pay it out and get it back anyway. So not really the best way to stop your opponent from doing things. However, sending it to memory means they're never getting it back. It doesn't matter how hard they try. That early play is just stuck there and you don't have to deal with it again. Second effect, or rather the first effect on this, If you're level 3 or higher, you can sack this card to choose one of your opponent's characters and either move it to an open position, or swap it with one of their other characters. Typically in this deck, if you're using that effect, it's going to be to swap one of your opponent's level 3s in the front row with a lower level character in the back row so that you can side to dodge counter step without really losing much soul. Ideally being able to side like a level 0 or level 1. But otherwise, you're not really using this as often in this deck since we're not going for reverses with the set 1 combo. It is a lot stronger in that scenario. And again, this card is a lot harder to threaten on defense. If you're playing this, you're playing it to crash it in offensively, so you do just have to keep in mind this is going to turn off the 2k backups. Though a lot of the time that you're playing this is to get rid of level 3s, so you probably have the anti-change backup live and able to be held up anyway, so it's less of a problem there. And the last card that we're looking at in our deck is Code Word. So this is our event. It's one of my favorite events in the game. It's really strong effect. 2-1, you salvage a character from your waiting room, and then you may put the top card of your deck into your waiting room. If it's an Itsuki, you salvage another character. And since our whole deck is Itsuki, as long as we don't mill a Climax or another copy of the event, we're going to get to salvage 2 for 1 stock, which is a +1, which is really good. It's 2 selective cards for 1 stock and 1 card out of hand. It's gaining hand size off of it is going to be able to help us resolve, multiple copies of our level 3 combo. It helps with the lack of selection that our level 1 combo gives us, since it just adds 3 off the top. Anytime that it gets to add Code Word to our hand means that we get pretty much whatever 2 cards we want, instead of random cards off the top. And since our level 3 combo can't discard events, this can turn itself into 2 characters to discard for that effect. All around, just works really well. Once we hit level 2, can help us loop level 1 combo an additional time, or get healers or whatever else we need, or just get counters. Just really good for setting up in any situation. It's also, notably, it's a level 2 event, and since our level 1 combo needs experience 2, it is actually a pretty good target for experience in the early game as well, so it doesn't really hurt us to run 4 of these. Now looking at some other options that we have in the deck, Itsuki doesn't actually have a lot of cards at most levels, so there aren't that many extra options here, but there's some worth looking at. We have a worst timing Itsuki Nakano. This saw a lot of play in set 1 decks, and still sees some play in set 2 decks of various builds. It's on play, reveal top. If it's quintuplets, put it in hand, discard 1. On play, discard a quintuplets, draw a card. Really popular effect. We see this on like the trial deck Toka for Data Live, stuff like that. Really good at trying to dig into like Climax's early game. Sees a lot of play in standby decks more than anything. In this deck, if you're playing it, it's A for green, and B because we don't have ways to search our level 1 combo, so you're just trying to dig into it. I think the ways that we're playing to dig into it might be a little better since they're seeing more than 2 cards most of the time, but this is still a good card nonetheless if you want green. Method to feel better, Itsuki Nakano. I actually wanted to fit this into the list really bad. This is one of my favorite Itsuki cards. It's on play, you can pay 2 to bounce one of your opponent's characters to their hand, and at beginning of your opponent's draw phase, reveal the top card of your deck. If it's level 1 or higher, you can return this to your hand, which means you get to bounce your opponent's stuff like every turn, which is awesome. In this deck, you'd mainly be using it late game to like bounce your opponent's characters to stop counter step. Really, that's what I've mostly played it for in quintuplets builds in general, is just to stop my opponent from getting a counter step. Though it's good against standby decks too, because you can just keep bouncing whatever like 2/2s they put in play, and they feel really awkward. And in this deck, we don't really need stock for anything, because our finisher is like 6 stock to tri-field it, so we can just keep playing these and it doesn't really matter that much, which is pretty awesome. When push comes to shove, Itsuki, this is from the trial deck. It's just a 4k, your opponent's characters get Encore 2. If you want more green fix and an oversize, this is the card to play. There's not much else to say about it. Echoing Itsuki Nakano, this is a level swap. since we do need experience for our level 1 and 3 combos. If you're really paranoid about not being able to get that experience condition, you can play this as a level swap. It also works with the rest of the deck pretty well, since A, the level swap is an act effect, and B, it pumps 1000 power when you use an act effect. So, two effects that really do work with the whole deck pretty well. If you have Crossed Boundary Itsuki Nakano, this is one of the box topper cards from set 2. On play, reveal the top card of your deck. If it's an event or a quintuplets character, you can put it face down underneath this as a marker. It's pretty nice that it hits on the code word event. And if you have a marker under it, it gains 3k. So this is just a 4,000 if you get a marker. Pretty nice for getting like 5-card brainstorms, which can help you stay at that max hand size and can help you search out the level 1 combo at like 0 the turn you hit 1, which isn't irrelevant. And it's a 4k, so it's an oversized for the deck. My main issue is trying to fit the oversizes in a deck like this is that our current plussing 0 of choice is the runner, but the runner's also our backup. So it's filling 2 roles at once, and cutting it for a different plussing 0 means all of a sudden we now have to find room for backups as well. So you'd probably have to cut like the level 1 bomb or something. That's kind of my issue there with trying to fit oversizes. Intimate Sisters Itsuki Nakano. This is a 1/1 that you could consider playing in place of the monthly death anniversary 1/1. It's an assist, so all of your characters in front of it get 500 at times their level, which is going to be 500 for your level 1 combo, but is pretty good behind your early plays. It's making them 9-5 cross turn, so immediately 12-5 as soon as you use an act on defense. Whenever you trigger check a comeback, you can give 2 of your Itsukis +1 soul until end of turn, which is really good at just like pushing a lot of damage at level 1, and can also late game be used to set up like side attacks and stuff like that. But overall, kind of just like a really aggressive card. And if you don't want to give the soul, it's up to you. Can just not give the soul and give it to back row or whatever. So never really a downside, but does let you push more damage when you want it. And has an act ability that gives a ridiculous amount of power. Rest this card and discard the level 0 Itsuki that we're playing. We're only playing 3 currently, so if you wanted to use this, I'd recommend going up to 4. But you discard it, give a character 5,500 power, which is massive. It will run over whatever you want it to. There is actually an argument that this is the better back row to be playing, and that's why I recommend it here. I don't know how important the power lines are. I don't know if this deck is going to struggle to beat some decks. I think early play-centric decks that are holding up counters are going to be your biggest issue and where this card will shine the most, since 5,500 is going to get you out of basically any counter range you can imagine. And since we're going to 9-hand, like 8-hand, 9-hand so often with this deck, having to discard the level 0 really isn't an issue at all. So I do think this is definitely a consideration to play as your back row alongside the Brainstorm. If you want a 1/1, some decks are moving towards playing cards that can't be reversed by cost 0s at level 1. So if you want a 1/1 to deal with those, this is basically your option. It also just gets kind of big in general. So 1/1 55 gains 500 for each of your backstage quintuplets, so it's a 1/1 65. And whenever it reverses something, you look at the top card of your deck and put it face down underneath this as a marker. It gains a level and 1,500 for each marker, which means it can start getting a really fat stack of markers and getting like massive power. This can pretty quickly, first marker makes it 8k, and then if it wins on defense, it goes to 9-5. So it pretty quickly scales like over 10k and gets really hard for your opponent to deal with, but it can also be anti-changed because it gains a level. I honestly do just wish this gained power and forced your opponent to side it. Anti-change bombs, and more specifically anti-change backups, are going to give this card a lot of trouble, so you have to be careful with that if you do want to play it. This is the promo. You can use the promo with all 5 girls or the Itsuki. It can be played without color, which isn't really relevant in this deck because it's red. And you can discard 1 card and sack this to Waiting Room to salvage a character, which when you have as much hand as this deck is going to have, that cost is pretty irrelevant. So this just lets you tutor anything you need from waiting room, which is really good. And it has an active, well, that's already an act ability, but it also has an act ability to pump 1000 power cross turn, which can help with your level 1 combo. It's not the best thing that I would want to put in my back row, but you know, you can play this, rest it to give your level 1 combo 1000 cross turn, and then sack it to salvage like another level 1 combo. And that's a pretty good line of play that gets you set up. And you're going to refill your hand anyway. So I like this card for that. If you didn't want to play the level 1 bombs, this is maybe something you could just replace them with. And try to field more copies of your level 1 combo. A 2-1 option we have, again, working with the level 0. During your turn, gains 1000 for each other quintuplets, so it's 11k. And on play, you can discard the level 0 to check top 5 add a quintuplets and gain 1000. Pretty good card. It gets a power level that is good at beating level 2s and some level 3s. If you discard especially, it goes to 12k, which can be 13 with Climax, which is big enough to get over level 3s. You're 14k if you're playing the level assist, which I would recommend using sort of all the cards that benefit from this 0 in the same package. Either try to fit as many of them as possible or none of them. Gets pretty big, and it gets big against level 2s, which is better than just getting big against level 3s most of the time. Also gives you a way to turn a mostly useless card later in the game in your hand into maybe finding another copy of your finisher or something like that, or a backup. So, good card. If you're struggling with beating like standby decks, this is probably a direction to take the deck. Another option if you want, you know, power against characters without needing to like go into the whole package of playing the level 0. This is just a 2-1-7-5 beginning of Climax phase. You get to choose one of the following abilities. Either A, it gains on attack if the character facing it's level 3 or higher, gains 6k. Or it can gain, when it direct attacks, give a character 2k cross turn. Give one of your other characters 2k cross turn. So it's either going to attack for 13-5 or make your early plays like 10k cross turn. Both good effects. It's only as good against level 3s. It's not really going to be as good against standby decks. But if you don't want to invest in as large of a package, you can play this as like a one-of. And after a turn where you like win board, it can still make your early plays big, or you can use it to run over your opponent's stuff. So it has multiple modes still. It doesn't become useless once you're winning on defense. Another option we have is a different backup. I didn't include this one in the deck. It's a 2500 backup that the secondary effect is kind of unique. You give the character in battle the ability that when its battle opponent becomes reversed, you can discard one to deal 1. Which is kind of neat, especially when you have as much hand as you do. But you have to think that at the point in game where this effect is relevant, you're kind of already dumping all of your hand into your finisher anyway. So you don't really have the extra hand to like discard to a burn 1 when you'd rather be getting the like burn 4, burn 1 off your combo. So I don't think it's just as good as like having a different backup effect here. Realistically, I wish Itsuki had a memory kick counter, but I don't believe she does, so we're just playing with the anti-change counter because I think it's better than this. A level 3 option that I think is, again, good if you're playing the entire package based around the level 0. It's on play, you can discard the level 0 Itsuki to salvage a quintuplets character, which can be good for setting up, you know, multiple copies of your finisher if you haven't had a chance to sculpt them. On play, you can pay 1 to add a Climax from your waiting room to your hand, which, although our finisher does cantrip, it's not always going to find you the Climax. This will, as long as it's in waiting room. And it's a +1, which is going to help the hand size issues to discard for all of your finishers. Last effect isn't something you would really use in this deck. It's more meant for the set 1 finisher. You can discard a card to give a quintuplets character 2500 power. However, if you are going for 1 copy of this and 2 copies of the finisher, you might actually have the 1 or 2 extra hand to do that. And I think that this card, playing this card and going for triple finisher is probably not super likely. So if you're playing this and going for double, you know, you might need it to get like out of counter range or something, or just make sure you reverse your opponent's character. Last option I would consider for level 3 is Earnest Girl Itsuki. Again, it salvages on play, so that is a +1 to hand size that's going to help pay for all of our costs. And on attack, discard 2, deal 1. In the scenario where you're one hand short for the third combo, or you had to level 1 for experience and couldn't get 3, this is your next best third lane, since it's obviously deal 1 is a lot worse than deal 1, deal 4, but it doesn't need a climax, and it's still extra finishing power, and it can help you select into copies of your finisher. So still something to maybe consider as like a one of for the times where you don't have enough hand to do triple finisher. And that's it for other options. This one has gone a bit long. There were a lot of sort of directions you can take the deck, mainly with that package involving the level 0, the quintessential quintuplets Itsuki from set 1. There's a lot of cards there that can sort of shift the direction of this deck into something different. And I think either version is fine. I've just opted for this one because I think it's a little more straightforward and simple. Easier to start with and sort of adjust to your liking. But it does also have a lot of tech options to play, like the bouncer. So whatever sort of works for your meta. There's also some sort of awkward issues with some of the cards conflicting with each other. So if you wanted to like cut the bombs for the 1/1s or something like that. A lot of easy changes to make. Overall, I think this is a strong deck though. The level 1 combo gives you more hand than like anything else in the game. And the level 3 combo is really strong. Strong enough that we've seen this Climax lineup at least. Though not Itsuki waifu specifically, but this Climax lineup in quintuplets decks topping regionals. So definitely a good shell to work off of here if you like Best Girl Itsuki like me. And yeah, let me know what you think. Thanks for watching. You can find me at BoatsDon'tSink on Twitter. You can check out our store at Iron City Games on Facebook or ironcitygames.tcgplayerpro.com, where we have singles, playsets, and sealed product pre-orders up for you to check out. Thanks for watching this video. Let me know what you thought of the deck, what changes you would make, and if you have any suggestions for future decks, leave them in the comments. And I'll see you next time.